The Chinese Communist Party's obsession with so-called national security has led to stricter scrutiny of private companies than ever before. This has decreased China's attractiveness and increased government enforcement measures, negatively impacting the decisions of multinational companies. Despite mainland China being Taiwan's largest trading partner, its share in Taiwan's trade has been steadily declining since 2021. In 2021, trade between mainland China and Taiwan was worth $208.4 billion US dollars, accounting for about a quarter of Taiwan's total foreign trade. By 2023, this figure had dropped nearly 20% to about $166 billion US dollars, accounting for just over a fifth of the total trade. In contrast, Taiwan's trade with Southeast Asia grew from $117.5 billion US dollars in 2021 to $134.6 billion US dollars in 2022, an increase of nearly 10% in just 1 year. In 2022, semiconductor manufacturer TSMC began moving its operations from mainland China to the United States. The first batch of 300 key employees and their families boarded a chartered flight to Phoenix, Arizona, where TSMC has invested 85 billion RMB in a new chip factory. These employees and their families will settle in the U.S., marking the first step in TSMC's relocation. TSMC's chip factory in the U.S. began construction in June 2021, with plans to install equipment in 2023 and start large-scale production in the first half of 2024. The factory will primarily produce 5-nanometer chips. Although this process is not as advanced as the 3-nanometer process at TSMC's Taiwan base, the relocation has begun, and more transfers may follow. Taiwan's dependence on exports to China has also decreased. Recent data, including Hong Kong, shows this dependency is at its lowest since 2018, with most of the difference going to Southeast Asian countries. What worries the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, the most is the sharp shift in Taiwanese investment. Since 2010, the inflow of Taiwanese investments into China has been declining. In 2023, this figure dropped nearly 40% from the previous year. Last year's inflow was 4.17 billion US dollars, less than one-third of the 2018 level. The difference in inflow has been redirected to Southeast Asia, especially Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. These countries now receive about 40% of Taiwanese investment outflows, higher than the proportion going to China. In just a few years, Taiwanese investment in Vietnam has increased fourfold, especially in the high-tech electronics sector, with companies like Foxconn, Wistron, Pegatron, and Quanta planning to expand their operations in Vietnam. Pingtan Island in Fujian province, which faces Taiwan across the sea, is the closest point on the mainland to Taiwan. To attract businesses, the island has offered tax breaks, subsidies, and residency assistance to Taiwanese investors. The Taiwan Town Shopping Center was created to attract Taiwanese businesses. According to a Financial Times report on June 30th, apart from a few tourists taking pictures of rusty statues decorated with traditional Taiwanese costumes, the shopping center was largely empty. Last year, Taiwan's investment in Fujian dropped by 80% compared to the previous year, reaching only 220 million US dollars, the lowest in 22 years. Trade was also affected. Fujian's imports from Taiwan decreased by 10.2%, and exports fell by 15.6%. At the same time, Taiwanese business people stated that rising production costs, trade tensions, and geopolitical risks forced them to relocate to other hubs. Dr. Chunyi Li is Associate Professor at the School of Politics and International Relations at the University of Nottingham. She told the Financial Times, no matter how China wants to sell that economic zone, the take-up from Taiwanese business seems not to be high. She added that companies are concerned about rising labor costs, competition with local companies, and the impact of the U.S.-China trade war. The departure of Taiwanese businesses not only impacts China's economy, but also serves as a deterrent to the CCP's attempts to unify Taiwan by force. An article in Forbes mentioned that as Taiwan's trade and investment in Southeast and South Asia grow, these Asian countries' stakes in Taiwan increase, making them more likely to resist any disruptive actions by the CCP. While these countries generally won't use military force to stop the CCP's repeated threats to take over Taiwan, the broader group of nations' interests makes the CCP's stance on Taiwan more awkward. Reuters reported on July 4th that new Chinese regulations allowing the death penalty for pro-independence Taiwanese have led some Taiwanese expatriates and foreign multinational companies operating in China to urgently assess their legal risks and exposure. These sources included a lawyer and 2 executives. James Zimmerman, a partner at Perkins Coie law firm in Beijing, said several companies had approached the firm to assess the risks that personnel might face. He declined to name the companies or industries due to confidentiality reasons. Zimmerman added, the companies are still concerned that there may be some gray areas, such as whether a benign social media post or voting for a particular political party or candidate in Taiwan elections could be interpreted as engaging in pro-independence activities. According to the latest survey by the Taiwanese government, about 177,000 Taiwanese were working in mainland China in 2022. Many multinational companies in China hire Taiwanese employees due to their language skills and familiarity with Chinese culture. The Taiwanese government estimates that since 1991, Taiwanese companies have invested over $200 billion in China, contributing to China's rise as the world's second-largest economy. 2 executives indicated that some foreign companies operating in China have already held safety meetings with their employees, but they prefer to remain anonymous due to the sensitivity of the issue. Another source said some Taiwanese employees in China have received and accepted options to leave the country. The CCP views democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory. Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te rejected Beijing's sovereignty claims, stating that only the people of Taiwan can decide their future. He condemned China's new regulations, saying,
I want to emphasize that democracy is not a crime. Tyranny is a real evil. China has no right to punish the people of Taiwan for their beliefs, and they certainly have no right to reach across borders to do so. According to China, opposing unification means supporting independence. In other words, whether you support the Taiwan faction, the Republic of China faction, or the Taiwan Republic of China faction, China sees them as all pro-independence. In Taiwan, there is only one party. Either you support independence or you support the Unification Promotion Party. So, I hope everyone can face this issue together, unite and cooperate. I also urge China to recognize the existence of the Republic of China and engage in dialogue with Taiwan's democratically elected government, as this is the right way to improve the well-being of people on both sides of the strait. If not, the relationship between Taiwan and China will only become more distant.
The regulations China introduced on June 21st cover crimes such as promoting Taiwan's membership in international organizations based on state status, engaging in official foreign exchanges, and suppressing parties, groups, and individuals that promote unification. Legal experts say that other actions attempting to separate Taiwan from China are also illegal, giving Beijing broad leeway to interpret these rules. The regulation does not specify who might be sentenced to death, only stating that leaders or individuals with serious criminal behavior causing significant harm to the state and people, under especially severe circumstances, can be sentenced to death. When asked how Taiwanese companies and employees are responding to this regulation, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs told Reuters, it is common practice in all countries to use criminal law measures to punish those who commit crimes of splitting the country and to defend the national core interests. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs also emphasized that the legislative documents target a very small number of stubborn Taiwan independence elements and their separatist activities, and do not concern the vast majority of Taiwanese compatriots. The Taiwan Affairs Office of China did not respond to requests for comment. On June 28th, the Taiwan Affairs Office said that the vast majority of Taiwanese people need not worry and can come with joy. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, responsible for relations with Beijing, told Reuters in a statement, the government reminds Taiwanese businesses and employees in mainland China to be more vigilant about personal safety. The risks are indeed increasing. Recently, the council urged Taiwanese people to avoid unnecessary travel to mainland China, Hong Kong, and Macau. The council also reported that in the past year, 8 retired Taiwanese military officers and police officers have been detained in China. Last year, the council warned that some Taiwanese scholars were detained and interrogated upon entering China, even when participating in official exchange programs. One executive who serves Taiwanese investors in China and was interviewed by Reuters said his phone has been ringing off the hook since the announcement of the new regulations, as people are concerned about what these rules might mean for their work. He said that these guidelines add to the uncertainty of doing business in China, following measures such as the anti-espionage law and the Hong Kong national security law. A second executive at a large multinational company stated that their Taiwanese executives frequently travel to China on business trips. The company has been holding regular meetings with senior management to assess the risks and consider whether to withdraw their personnel from China. The executive said, "We haven't reached the point of deciding not to send them, but we are reviewing and assessing the risks daily." A researcher at the Atlantic Council's Global China Hub said that Beijing's regulation will force foreign companies to either completely relocate their business to retain Taiwanese talent or stop hiring Taiwanese talent altogether. Sung pointed out that this means there will be fewer Taiwanese working or living in China, making Beijing's efforts to win over the hearts of the Taiwanese people even more difficult. The CCP has labeled Taiwan's president Lai Ching-te as a separatist and conducted military exercises shortly after his inauguration in May. Since Lai won the election in January, Taiwan has complained about increasing pressure from China, including ongoing military actions, trade sanctions, and Coast Guard patrols around Taiwan-controlled islands adjacent to China. Another new national security regulation came into effect on July 1st, authorizing authorities to inspect smartphones, personal computers, and other electronic devices. This regulation is part of the implementation of the CCP's so-called anti-espionage law, which was amended last July to expand the definition of espionage to include all documents, data, material, and items related to national security and interests. Previously, the law only covered state secrets and intelligence. The revised anti-espionage law also grants unprecedented enforcement powers to the CCP's Ministry of State Security and its local branches, allowing them to enter, question, and inspect personal electronic devices and commercial facilities. In emergencies, such inspections can be conducted without a search warrant. If the police are unable to inspect electronic devices on site, they have the authority to take these items to designated locations. However, what constitutes an emergency remains unclear. These regulations have caused concern among foreign individuals and businesses about potential increased surveillance by CCP authorities. On May 26, the CCP's Ministry of State Security announced 2 new enforcement procedures, which include granting law enforcement officers the power to inspect electronic devices. This means that visitors to China could also be subject to inspections by local law enforcement officers. Reports indicate that customs in Shenzhen and Shanghai have already started randomly checking the smartphones and laptops of incoming travelers. Radio Free Asia reported that on April 26, the Ministry of State Security announced the regulations on administrative enforcement procedures for state security agencies and the regulations on procedures for handling criminal cases by state security agencies. These 2 documents mention that local law enforcement officers will be given the power to inspect electronic devices. Both new regulations came into effect on July 1st. However, a woman named Jiang, who had just returned to Hong Kong from Shenzhen, revealed in an interview on July 7th, "Last weekend, I saw a woman behind me being stopped and her phone inspected by customs officers at the Fujian border crossing. When passing through customs in Shenzhen, I saw 2 customs officers inspecting a female tourist's phone. They not only opened the phone, but also said, 'You don't only have one phone. Do you have other phones? Take them out for inspection.'" According to Jiang, similar situations have recently occurred at Nanjing and Hangzhou airports. She mentioned, "The customs officers check the contents of your phone and photos. That day, I organized my phone's data and deleted highly sensitive content." A man named Xiao from Shanghai reported, "When I recently returned from Japan to Shanghai, I saw customs officers inspecting a man's phone at the airport. I also saw a Chinese man stopped by customs, and after checking his phone, they let him go, indicating they didn't find any issues." The new regulations in China do not specify whether they only target Chinese citizens, implying that foreign travelers entering China are also likely to have their phones, computers, and other electronic devices inspected by customs officials. Chinese legal scholar Lu Chenyuan pointed out, the regulations related to national security, which will take effect on July 1st, easily create a sense of fear among the public. I think their goal is to create a situation where everyone feels endangered. There is widespread concern that anyone entering China might not escape the scrutiny. On May 28th, China's Ministry of State Security claimed that the regulations only target espionage activities. However, the public is skeptical, with people saying, if the CCP says you're a spy, even if you're not. A hot topic on Chinese social media is the Ministry of State Security's response to being checked for phones when entering China. On June 28th, the ministry published a bilingual article stating that the inspection targets are clear and must involve individuals and organizations related to anti-espionage work, such as those suspected of spying on military restricted areas or classified units. Staff members are not allowed to conduct random inspections unrelated to anti-espionage activities. The article also claimed that the statement, "Everyone entering China will have their phones checked," is propaganda by hostile anti-China forces abroad. However, netizens do not trust the ministry's response. On X, netizens left comments refuting the claims. Many netizens said, "An explanation is just a cover-up, and a cover-up indicates the truth. The CCP will search you if they want. No need for reasons. The reason is whatever they say." Another netizen remarked, "If the CCP says you're a spy, then you're a spy, even if you're not." Another commented, "They say you are whatever they decide." The Ministry of State Security's article confirms the phone inspections are real. They don't check everyone, but they check whoever they want. One netizen asked, "In a country without rule of law, can anyone explain to me what clear inspection targets mean?" Netizens have also analyzed that the arbitrariness of the CCP's judicial and national security enforcement is too high, and their methods are too despicable. For example, CCP security personnel might deliberately guide unfamiliar Japanese tourists into military restricted areas, then arrest them and use this for hostile diplomacy with Japan. Similar incidents in China are not uncommon. Another netizen expressed, "If the national security already knows who the spies are, why not deny them entry? And if they haven't entered yet, what secrets could they have on their electronic devices for national security to see? If this is a tactic of pretending to release but actually capturing, hasn't it already alerted the enemy? How can we continue to reason this out?" Recently, the CCP announced that it will hold the third plenary session of the 20th Central Committee on July 15th. This meeting, which has been delayed for nearly a year, has been dramatically proclaimed by the CCP as an important step in deepening reforms, continuously expanding institutional openness, and creating a business environment that is more in line with market rules, legal norms, and international standards. Such expectations for the third plenary session are overly imaginative and hopeful. At the Politburo meeting on June 7th, the CCP emphasized that the principles for deepening reform are to adhere to the comprehensive leadership of the party, firmly maintain the authority and centralized leadership of the party's Central Committee, and to ensure the reforms always proceed in the correct political direction, among other things. In short, a simple word, party, is enough to extinguish all fantasies. In reality, Xi Jinping is waging a war against the Chinese people, which he himself has described as a civil war. The third plenary session will be the declaration of the civil war.